She's my cousin. She's my third cousin. That's right. Don't see her. Yes, because I had lasting ignorance with her. We were sitting on you wouldn't. She's lucky, yeah. You're gonna need that later. She's good friends with long weekend, so they were all down in the water. Saw me play.
Oh, that's fun. Your friend wanted to go 24 hours.
I know.
Ingrid's a fashion.
Taylor's a nurse. Yeah, we do that since I heard it. But I don't know my reason. Yeah, so.
This is what the world sees, as long as this green bar is moving.
Hi, Marie. I'm going to dig some holes. Hi, Virginia. How are you? How are you? Good. I'll just watch that.
Alright guys, if you want to gather around, find a comfy spot, we'll get started in a sec. Thanks everyone for coming. Welcome to May the Mobility Be With You. Today is the first of 8 sessions over the next 4 weeks. So Fridays will be in person here at the gym at 6:30 and Tuesdays online at around the same time, although we might push back the Tuesday nights just 10 minutes or so just so I can get home from work and get sorted. All the sessions will be recorded for playback, so if you miss one, don't stress, you can catch up in your own time, no troubles at all. And any questions that you have from those sessions, you can hit me up anytime. In the master sheet, there'll be my contact details. Also in the master sheet, you'll find links for all the playbacks. We'll just update that each week so that you don't have a bajillion emails filling in your box, because no one likes that. Each session will consist of an education component and a practical component, and we'll do the trains. Hopefully everyone on the video can hear me all right. Today's education component will be the longest, just because it'll give you an understanding of where we're going and the theoretical underpinning of what we're doing. And each session will be targeted at a particular part of the body and will work from the ground up. And questions about any specific problems you have are very welcome during, after, in between sessions, whatever, hit me up. In our practical sessions, we'll be working from the ground up, systematically going through from toe to head, just to be different. We'll spend more time on some areas compared to others, but if there's something in particular that you'd like covered in more detail, just come and have a chat to me. We're also going to zoom in on the core and breathing because they're really, really important in terms of giving you the stability to manage your newfound mobility. First question is for everyone. What is mobility? The opposite of Harry. Any other answers?
Potential
How
range of
much
movement.
your joints and other areas of your body can bend?
Yeah, how much your joints and other areas of your body can bend, potential movement.
Greatest range of motion for each joint.
Yep, greatest range of motion for each joint. Anything else? No? Cool. All right. Why is it important before we move on?
Agility determines longevity.
Does determine longevity? What do you say, Virginia?
Being able to function.
Being able to function, yeah. And perform well, that's right. Okay, so like we touched on, mobility is the ability to move. That's the simplest way to think about it. It is slightly different to flexibility in that it also involves producing force. So if you're flexible, you might be able to get into a good position, but then once you're in that position, not be able to generate force. But if you're mobile, you can get into the position and generate force from it. The structures that allow you to have mobility, like Kayla touched on there, are your joints, your muscles, connective tissue, fascia, nerves, and we'll briefly explore the role of each of these so that you can understand why we're doing what we're doing when we get to the physical component. A few key reasons why mobility are important is firstly, reduce risk of injury. So like Joe touched on, longevity, better biomechanics and greater potential to produce force. So you can lift heavier and longer. Muscle injuries tend to happen when the load you're placing on your body is greater than your body's capacity. So we can think about that like a bucket, if everyone can see here. We have our bucket and we load it up with stuff, whatever that is. And your load that you put in your bucket is not just your workouts, it's the positions that you spend a lot of time in each day, it's any incidental exercise, it's the workouts that you do, everything. Everything you do with your body goes in the bucket. If you put too much in the bucket overflows and you get niggles or you get more major injuries. They can be acute, they can be chronic, they can last a long time, not a long time, depends how much you overflow the bucket by and what else is in there. So there's two ways we can get around that. Way number one, which no one likes, is put less load in the bucket. Not a lot of fun sitting on the sidelines. The other way we can get around it, build a bigger bucket, okay? Mobility is one of the things that's going to give you a bigger bucket alongside the things like strength training, which we do in here. But where strength training, strength adaptations will take months and months of consistent work, mobility can give you almost instant changes. The only downside to that is they're not lasting unless you're consistent with them. So you can get instant changes, but if you want to capitalize on those changes a few hours later, they're probably gone and you need to do the mobility exercise again before you then try and capitalize on it. Optimal mobility will also give you greater potential to produce force by increasing the size of what we call the mid-range, which we'll circle back to in a minute. But first, let's try something. Harry, can you grab me a 7.5 kilo dumbbell? Beautiful. Now I need a volunteer to try something out. Yeah, Tegan? Okay. Here's a 7.5 kilo dumbbell, Tegan. Yep. I want you to stand as close to it as you can with a T-Rex arm and try and pick it up. So, good. And put it down again. Is that easy or hard?
It was all right. It wasn't hard, but it was awkward, I suppose.
Awkward?
Yeah.
Yep. And now can you stand as far as you can away from it and then try and pick it up?
With my T-Rex arm.
No, you can have your full arm. Reach for it as far as you can. Yep. And then pop it down again. Good. How hard was that?
Yeah, it's a little bit
A
harder.
little bit harder?
Yeah.
Okay. Now if you stand comfortably close to it and pick it up as you normally would if I wasn't telling you what to do. How hard is that?
Not hard at all.
Not hard at all. Okay, so option one there. Thank you, Tegan. You can have a seat. Yes, round of applause. So if we're talking about how far your muscles, your joints, everything together can move, and we give them a line to represent that. Okay, so Tegan's capacity to move, her mobility, is represented by this line. When she's T-Rex arm, she's at her inner end range. New respect for teachers who ride on the board all day. At the end, other end, where she was reaching really far for it, is her outer end range. We saw that it was more difficult here, slightly more difficult here, but easy here in what we call, right backwards, mid-range, okay? Why is that, do you think? Yes, she can. And that's because the muscles that she wants to use to perform that action are sitting in their optimal, what we call length-tension relationship. So muscles can be really, really long and not produce a lot of force, or really, really short and not produce a lot of force. And that's where the mid-range comes in. So to understand it better, within every muscle, there's hundreds and hundreds of fibers all running along the length of the muscle. And then if we were to take out one of those fibers and have a closer look at it, it'll be made up of little units all the way along the length of it. Some of you will be familiar with these. Lined up like train carriages, okay? And then in a schematic way, we'll just say the tendon and the bone at the end. Oh, different bone. Not a great draw. Anyway, within each of these little muscle units, we have little filaments in there, so little mini structures in each unit. And to produce force, what happens is they need to grab onto each other, slide together. So they'll start here in their optimal length tension relationship, and then they'll slide together to contract and produce force, and that will bring the two bones closer to each other. So for example, with a bicep curl, my bicep is this muscle here. Fibers slide together, and I'm moving one bone, or two bones really, my forearm, towards my arm bone, creating force, yeah? What happens if the muscle is too long? Oops. Is that we actually haven't got enough contact for these two parts of the fibre to grab onto each other and knit together to pull together. If it's too long. Oh, thanks, Ray. If it's too short, which most of us will find when we're feeling tight and really stiff, it's too short, the opposite happens. It's already bunched together as much as it can possibly go. And so if we think back to our inner, outer, and mid-range, when we are in our inner range, this is what our muscle fibers look like. When we're in our outer range, this is what our muscle fibers look like. When we're in our mid-range, they're happy they can produce the most force possible. Okay, so that's why it's really important to improve your mobility so that you've got a big mid-range to work with. Any questions on that before we move on? No? Cool. I'll leave that there for a minute. All right. other thing about strength adaptation, circling back to strength compared to mobility, is you can't have one without the other. So if you are trying to make strength adaptations through strength training and you don't have the mobility to move into the positions required for that lift, then you're going to have biomechanical faults. So for example, if you don't have enough ankle and hip mobility to move beyond here in your squat, what's going to happen to get you lower is you're going to curl your back. Okay, so you're going to have a spinal flexion fault. And there'll be different faults for every movement. But the point is, you think you're trying to train legs when you squat, legs and core, right? If you're ending up in a spinal flexion fault, you're not training your legs. You're not going to get the strength adaptations in your legs. You're going to get a sore back, which keeps me in business, but I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Okay. I'm just going to touch quickly on the steps involved in creating movements. This is slightly better drawing of someone far more artistic than me. If you look at the meaty part of a muscle, you've got all these fibers and then the mini fibers in within them and then mini fibers in within that. And when you zoom into the very bottom layer and you cut them up, that's what you get. Each of those little fibers has their own little nerve supply. So when we go to move, we'll decide what movement we're going to do. This may be conscious or unconscious. Starts in the brain. The brain will then pick a software program for us. So we've got lots and lots of different software programs. We start developing them when we start crawling, walking, moving as babies. And then we continually shape them and adapt them as we go through different training, different exposure to different sports, different positions, etc. So we'll pick a program, the nerves will carry that program down through the spinal cord, out through the spinal nerves, and then it'll branch into hundreds of billions of different branches that end up talking to each of these little fibers. Once they come out of the nerves give the muscle the signal, the muscle will decode that signal and go, okay, we need 50 fibers working at 75% force to move this load. What's also happening during that movement is that there are little sensors embedded in the muscles, in the ligaments that support your joints, your skin, lots of other structures around a joint and around muscles that are giving your brain, back in the opposite direction, constant feedback as to what you're doing. And that's how we know what position we're in even when we can't see ourselves in the mirror. So if you all close your eyes now, stick your arm up over your head, and then with your other hand, try and touch the tip of your index finger. Most of you can get pretty close or even hit it straight away, yeah? That's proprioception. So that's coming from all the sensors in your arms, your elbow, to know exactly how far you've moved to get to that spot, yeah? So that's constantly happening through all your movements. But what can happen then is when you have poor mobility from injuries or just training bad movement patterns, the software program that you use will not be the best software program that you should be using. So that's where when you have an injury and you go to rehab, yes, you want to heal the structure, but you also at the very end, instead of going, oh, I'm back to normal life now, I don't actually need to finish my rehab, you need to then retrain your movement patterns properly, because as a short-term solution, changing your movement pattern is really helpful while your injury is healing. After that, if you continue to use that B grade, C grade program, you're going to be loading up other structures whose primary job is not to do that function, and you're going to end up with more injuries down the track, and that impacts your longevity. Okie dokie. The reason we go over all of those components to movement is because they relate to all the different ways to improve your mobility. So there are things like sustained holds, repeated movements, loaded movements, nerve gliding, accessory movement programming, and they're all good for different things. So sustained holds are really good for improving the mobility of non-contractile tissue. So things that, rubbed it out, but things that can't slide together and contract. So your ligaments, your joint capsules, your fascia. stuff that you can't consciously control. Sustained holds are a great way to do that. Same with repeated movements, typically, more for joints. Loaded movements are a great way to improve the mobility of contractile tissues, so your muscles, for example, a Jefferson curl, something like that. Nerve gliding is a really good way to improve the response time of the movement messages and relieve neural tension, which can develop through poor or prolonged postures. Nerves don't have the ability that muscles do to contract and relax, a tiny bit, but not really. And so when we sit in prolonged postures, particularly for work or for driving, that sort of thing, relaxing, watching Netflix, what can happen is that the way the nerves slide past your muscles and everything else in your body, it can get a bit sticky. Instead of gliding smoothly, it's a bit tough. And so if everyone sits up tall, try sticking their arm out beside them, shoulder down away from your ear, tip your hand away from you, and then to start, that might be enough for some of you, so don't force it if it's enough. Then turn your head away from it if you can. And you might start to feel tingling in the hand or burning through the arm, or just a general tension feeling. That's neural tension. So nerve gliding is one way that we can relieve that by just getting it gliding through the passage it needs to be going through smoothly, and that can speed up the process of movement signals, etc. Make you move better. Accessory movement programming is a really good way to create muscle memory and actively choose which movement programs you want to make more efficient. Flick you back into your A team of movements. And that makes them the preferred program within compound movements. So we might program high box step-ups as an accessory movement going into pistol squats. We might train scapular depression, shoulder blade depression for your lat pull down before your barbell lifts, that sort of thing. So that then when you go to do your barbell lift, you don't have to think this step, this step, this step, this step. The muscle memory takes care of it all, and then you can move smoothly, and it's all a rapid movement program. It's all integrated into the one program, and you don't have to try and execute 5 programs at once. So I don't know about your computer, but mine doesn't like that. Body doesn't like it either. We'll use all of these methods over the next 4 weeks to improve your mobility, and I'd encourage you as we move through them to just try and use these labels to identify each exercise, because you might identify a trend. So for example, if you feel the most benefit from loaded movements, it may be that your muscles are what's hampering your mobility the most. If you I was going to make a funny joke about Luca, but he's here. So if you're super flexy like Luca, he was just telling us in the last class, it's not actually, it's only his shoulders. If you're super flexy like Luca and you can get to end range with no problems, then accessory movement programming might be better for you, so that you're actually developing control through the mid-range instead of just hanging out at your end range and using your passive support structures like your ligaments and your joints to create your movement, because they don't have the capacity to adapt to strength training the way that your muscles do. So you want to flick into using those instead. And identifying which one works best for you can also help you identify what your problem areas are, so that you can target your approach and not spend hours working on your mobility, but spend maybe 15, 20 minutes a couple of times a week and actually get good results. All right, it's time to get moving. We are going to break up into pairs, groups of 3. You'll each need to turn your box in your groups so that it's 30 inches high. So make sure there's 30 on the side with the arrow pointing up. You'll find on there some clipboards with some testing sheets on them. There are 3 on each clipboard. If you need more, let me know. I've got a couple of spare ones up here. But for now, break up into your groups and then I'll explain what we're going to do. Okay. 3, 4. Okay, another sheet. There we go. Anyone else in a 4? Yep, you'll get another sheet. Okay, so I'll quickly run you through, now that you've got one in front of you, I'll run you through each of the boxes on here. So the first test we're going to do is a barefoot squat. So everyone pop your shoes off with the poly pipe and the broomstick. And Ryan, if you could just make, socks off as well. If you could make the camera follow me over here.
Feel bad as a trainer.
You're going to jump in under the rig. You'll see the line here from the gym tiles. Bring the poly pipe overhead and start with the ball of your foot on the line. From there, you're going to come down as low as you can into a squat without whacking the upright with the poly pipe, which tells me you're coming forward. And then my friend Virginia here, perhaps where I'm hitting the pole, just for repeatability, you're going to measure from the top of the pipe to the floor. Quick, It is 140. 140. So in my box, I'm going to record 140. And I'm also going to record how difficult it felt to get down there. So given the workout that we've just done, I'm going to rate that a 5 out of 10. If 10's like, I feel amazing, and 0's like, I can't do it at all, which you'll find noted on there. Record difficulty and height.
Does it matter the width of your feet and position of your feet?
Just sort of comfortable shoulder width apart, toes pointing more or less straight ahead, not too much turnout.
And flat.
Good question. And yeah, flat, so shoes off. Make sure it's repeatable. Second one you're going to do is knee to wall. I'm going to imagine that this is my wall. Hoping that most of you can start measuring from the pole to your big toe. You'll have enough mobility to do that. And your knee's going to come forward over your second toe. It's not going to come out to the side either way. If you have really poor ankle mobility, you might need to start your toe against the pole and measure the distance from your knee to the wall instead of your toe to the wall. Again, centimeters and how difficult it felt. Also going to do hip flexor length. So
Sorry, before you move on.
Yeah.
So that's heel down.
heel must be on the floor. Yeah. No, I don't think this is on its 30 side, is it?
That is on 30.
That is
Yeah.
on 30 inches.
Okay, everyone make it this way. 25. 24.
24.
Hey.
So it's 24, okay. So what you're going to do, just record, we'll tighten the boxes on to make sure it's the same. You're going to find very top of your butt crack, which is the bottom of your coccyx. Rest that on the edge of the box. One knee to your chest and rock backwards. Oops, try not to hit your head. And then from there, your partner's going to measure from the floor to the bony bit at the top of your kneecap. Any questions about that one? On the leg that's dangling down. So butt crack on the edge, rock back, and on the dangling leg, at the top of my kneecap to the floor, that's the measurement we're taking. And over time, we're hoping that that gets smaller, that distance. Record your left and right. I'll come around and help you guys as we go, but I'll just give you a rundown. Also going to do hollow hold time. Is everyone familiar with all the variations of that one? Cool. So pick whichever variation you can hold for at least 5 seconds and hold it for as long as you can. And then we'll retest at the end. The last two, I'll do the very last one first because it's a bit easier. Am I still in frame here, right?
Yes.
From here, sitting on the ground, fingertips away from you, about shoulder width apart. And then you're going to try and scoot your bottom as far away as you can Your partner's going to measure from the bit where your butt hits the floor to your wrist crease. So that distance from my butt to my wrists there. Then the last one, which is not very pleasant, sorry, very important. If you find the bony parts at the top of the front of your hips, if you need help finding them, let me know. Virginia, can you hold my legs, please? As hard as you can. Push down on them. That's it. Yep. And you're going to try and hold yourself level with the box for as long as you can. Okay? Any questions about those? Oh gosh. Timing how
This
long
will be
you
a
hold
bit
it.
revealing.
Yeah. So you'll need a stopwatch for a couple of them because we've got a few people and only 4 or 5 tape measures. Perhaps some of you can start on the stopwatch ones, grab your phones, or we've got a little stopwatch up here. Question, Ray?
Can I just need to show the knee to wall one again?
Yes. Can you guys see me there? Try about there for a start. Knee to wall over your second toe. If that's comfortable, come back a little bit further. See if you can get your knee to the wall. I can't quite there without lifting my heel a little bit, so that's a no rep.
Measuring from the back of the heel to the
Measuring from the front of your toe to the wall, but your heel must be down. You'll also notice there's a little spot at the bottom for personal goals. I want you to think about any areas that you have trouble with. Maybe come up with a couple of goals and we'll have a look at those ones next week. But we'll do the ones that everyone's doing today. All right, I'm going to set what time is it? 7 o'clock. I'm going to set a 15-minute time cap on this. Up to.
Should we do it
In 3, so measuring one, doing one, recording. Name on it? Yeah, if you can set 15 minutes, that's perfect. There's one more tape measure, you guys, if anyone needs it.
So with the hollow hold, you just make sure lumbar spine is. So as soon as you get a bit of extension. you're-
Yeah, as soon as you get a little bit of extension. I would go through one recording, one and if you want to do each exercise and switch.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I'll accept a late registration if you're ready.
On the line. You'll be out of
Just make sure you record that you've got both arms and legs out and you're doing a variation. It's all right, we've got the keys.
As soon as I extend to the
Yeah.
And your wrist.
I think from height to that very good.
Shape, Ryan.
Ready, set, go. Doing both ankles?
Yeah, both hands are on your for that.
So from your toe,
Oh, wow. My left one's so much better.
And then your left and right, you need to wall. 110.
Yep.
You're right. More than 5 seconds.
No, so you measure. Could yours
Is that
left?
just because that's.
No, so you because we're going from the axis. So hold.
Yes.
So
105.
20.
Yeah, exactly.
With a pulse there.
on my right.
It's better than the trains in the background.
You're touching the box.
A little bit like.
Three, two,
Yeah, go. Keep up. Now, go your first round.
You were ready?
Yeah.
I'll just do a minute.
80 for that.
ready?
80, yeah.
You'll get it sometime.
Yeah.
That's probably 80.
I'll do that.
Stop showing
This is my bag.
Where my arms?
Oh, where do we put our arms? Push up extension?
Just beside you.
Yeah.
Or you can cross them over.
Yeah, it is a little way.
14.
Is that alright? The pressure goes a bit.
Yeah.
That's not, that's
Could you lie down? One day hard work to hold. So that's what just a minute is enough.
you were so close to this 16. Yeah, you
Is that harder?
Whoa, I'm
Yeah.
having hurry up.
14.
You're not touching the phone.
We'll give it 13. What's that?
That wasn't just
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Alright.
Go in, everything. Come on. It's like yeah, there you go. Keep it up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, need now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which one?
From Zoom.
That's
You actually hurt. No, I do feel my lower back. I put it on the
Harry, if your foot's already hitting the floor, start doing
On which side?
That's right. That is.
Wait, you need straight kids. Oh,
Alex, how close should our hand?
shoulder width.
So measure.
I'd say 74.
Oh, sorry.
Car's about to explode.
82.
Yeah. 79.
I just went to write
Yeah.
All right, about 4 minutes to go, guys. Get cracking.
And 78 from the 78.
So top you got currently
and I'm 69.
What about me?
64.
We still
How do you just casually kick your leg up?
Let's go to
So
That's going about 2/3 of
back
the
of my hand.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's right. Just down my wrist. Okay.
Bottom measurement joints. And you measure to.
Yeah.
To the wrist crease.
Sorry,
From the wrist?
From the wrist to the butt.
From the wrist to the butt, to the butt, to the butt, to the butt, to the butt. Okay.
Now we know what.
I like being in and around my anus. There goes. Oh, that was my.
Why are we laughing?
So, arms behind, fingers pointing away from you. That shoulder starts. So, you give us forward as far as you can go.
So we can do all sorts, I can hold like that.
Yeah.
Hold, yes.
1970s.
So we want to make sure the whole blade is as well. And hold it. I'm not going to be able to get very fast.
Okay, ready? Go.
Don't be so tolerant.
Yeah. I did that the other day.
Go get it.
I don't know. Try one hand.
5 seconds already.
Is that too wide? Is that better?
Let's see what Elijah's doing.
You're moving your hands slow, Rouse.
Yes!
68.
No.
Sorry.
Right.
Maybe 42.
I was aiming for it, so I do it.
Okay. Now we need
Go
a
back, guys.
51.
Love that you're all working in tandem there.
Oh, how long you got?
You're right there, Liam. Awesome.
Just use your phone.
Alright, we'll do two at once.
Oh, how are we going, guys? Are we nearly done?
One more.
All right. We'll go another couple of minutes.
So, I got my own ones.
You've got timer.
5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
That's my leg.
And you go both arms up.
Yeah, arms by side.
Yes.
Up the. That's 15 seconds. We get a minute. Let's do this in the warm up.
Yeah, but that was rotating, so you got rest.
Actually, 2 minutes. Thirty-five seconds.
Alright.
40 seconds. Now we're all these double up, so. Hang on. You say it's gonna shoulder.
Oh, what's that?
Say when you're ready.
That's a minute. Minute 1.
Yeah.
Alright. Well, at least you got what I said you had to get.
Actually.
That's me.
Just trying to.
Can we go back? Is that what we're
Yeah,
doing?
that's alright.
But which one you're most comfortable with?
It's all right.
2,
I'm jealous. It's all right.
1, go.
Annie's gonna be there for hours.
Yeah, how long you got?
We'll just leave it here. Yeah. We're all going home to dinner. Scary.
Sorry, bye. Closing up the gym.
Did someone bring me takeaway? That'd be nice.
Yeah, we could go some time.
Such blasphemy. Inside the box.
1 minute.
30.
Is all that right there, right?
Don't forget to breathe during.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Listen, I know I was burning internally. That's pretty good for long-limbed Larry over here.
Minute 15.
All done, guys?
No,
Beautiful. How are we going over here? Done? Awesome.
I'll get to that. You can't sit down.
And he's not prepared for the trauma of the
I really am not.
Yes, me, that's
Okay, oh, so we want to do the back extension.
Yeah.
I got a feeling actually stands out.
You guys
You're in the right.
Someone needs to hold you down.
That's all right. I'll next week.
And I just like put your legs together a little bit.
Alright.
Does that hold you down?
3, 2, 1.
Send you an email saying it's easy to talk about.
Yeah, no, that's so
What's a good amount of time? Let's say
40 minutes.
10 seconds. Minute 9 seconds. Okay. 15 seconds.
Just tell me every 15 rounds.
Oh, that's a good way to do it.
Like 5 second cues, you know, I'm a bit more needy.
Just screw that.
1 minute and
That's 30 seconds.
Make sure you put your names on your sheets. If you finish that sheet about personal goals,
I coordinated that first.
That is 45 seconds.
minute 28.
Long course, so it's really biting back now, isn't it?
My butt is on fire.
That's 1 minute.
What's that? Oh, God.
Oh my God.
You're also short, Vicky.
Very tight.
Yeah, well, the issue is. Yeah, because that's time towards you.
We're done.
very good.
Now you need to fix it.
We
I don't teach you to fix yourselves.
we can't this one minute.
Yeah, we just.
Because of the time.
No, we did 5 minutes each, and that was the time.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
1, go.
How many people have you guys got to go?
I actually feel as if I'm on a separate.
Yeah, like, first separation.
How about you guys get a second station going?
Annie,
Oh,
I'll just start at the 30 second mark.
okay.
How many of you to go
What
here?
am I supposed to do? 2? Okay, let's get 6, 26, 28, 29, 31. Alright, someone at a time? Yeah, we just wait for, oh, yeah. Both at the same time.
So you're doing my feet.
Alright, Liana get
I don't even know what I'm to be honest.
Ready?
No.
Yeah, you are.
Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous about. Yeah.
Hold your arm. Oh, that's it. I'm very interested.
Well done.
Well done.
Beautiful shape, Lauren.
I'm a bit nervous about falling. I have this fear about it.
It's okay.
You're on.
Concentrate on the boss ahead.
Your line won't go to the footy.
It's wonderful.
It's
Like,
His footy only starts at 12. You see that? Yeah, but, so they had to refresh. They just stand.
I don't know anymore.
How many minutes? A minute 16.
Yeah, still going, she's doing well.
No, I think it's rather one. And okay, stop, Annie. She went down at 1:46.
Is that for me, like 120?
Yes, I did it before I came.
125.
Did you do your 3 days?
Oh, well
That was-
done. Oh, yesterday was the worst.
Oh.
Then you reach the hump. Today you're over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I suppose
Eat,
I'll have to
don't
go
eat,
for
whatever.
it. Yeah. I don't want to have a late dinner, so.
What did you have?
Seven.
Go.
Yeah, good choice. Yeah. Guys, when you're done, just come and sit around, ready to get started
For
again.
a while, so I think we should sit around.
Yeah, we might start chatting while you're finishing
Like a
up.
lady on the bow.
The shit. What are they called? Yeah.
I used to know the name of them.
27.
All right.
140, push down a little bit harder. Thanks.
Those of you who are still back extensioning, continue doing that. I'm just going to talk to you about some prizes because we're all a little bit competitive. Okay, so a couple of challenges. Now, Tegan, can you help me put a video up on here? It's loaded on the other.
ATW. I shouldn't need to walk.
Yeah, that's right. 210. Yeah, she wants to go slow. So pretend she can't go.
Okay, so I get it. It's just a drag. All right, so eyes on the screen, guys. This is a mobility challenge, requires a lot of core control, a lot of hip rotation, a lot of ankle mobility, a lot of shoulder mobility. Anyone who can do this by the end of the month will win a vibrating foam roller. All right.
They are.
This is a local yoga teacher in Geelong. You can follow him on Instagram for, that's not what it is. So you have a block balancing on each foot. You're gonna do a full hollow to Superman kind of roll and over back to your start position.
What is that?
How is that even possible?
That is.
Really good mobility, really good control.
Oh, she's done.
317.
Oh my God, my wrist.
There you go. Well done, Brian. Okay, so anyone who can do that,
You're a 7.
major winner.
Okay, look.
We're also going to have some minor prizes for most improved knee to wall, ankle mobility, most correctly identified mobility method labels. So of each of the exercises that we go through in our mobility WOD kind of thing, if you can label them with those labels, so your accessory movements, your static holds, your repeated movements, those labels, if you remember that. And most improved squat depth as well, prizes for that.
What's KTW?
Knee to wall. KTW, knee to wall. All right. Now, I'm mindful of everyone's time. We're not going to spend a lot of time here on anatomy. This is just to give you a bit of a general sense that there's a lot that goes into the foot and the ankle. And it's a solid foundation that we work from every day. So you've got bones with all the joints. Got a little foot here. You've got shin bone moving on top of the ankle. The ankle can move in 3 different directions there. You've got all these little bones through here that control the roll of the foot. So some of you may identify with really high arches, some of you flattened arches. We're going to learn to control that. This is the really deep layer of ligaments and intrinsic muscles in the feet, which we'll talk about in the next couple of exercises. And then if we go up a layer again, 4 more layers of muscles, a whole bunch of nerve fibers telling them what to do. Also, just a quick overview of the calves. So lots of different muscles through the calves and the shins, and that's where they reside, but they actually control the movement of the ankle, to a lesser degree the knee, but mainly through the ankle and through the foot. And you can see on the next one how they come down from the calf, come down around under to the bottom of your toes. So some of the exercises you go, oh, it might seem like it's burning here even though we're targeting here. Don't be alarmed, it's all part of the plan. If we were to slice you in half here across the shin and look straight down, you'd see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different muscles. 11, that's a tendon of another muscle that is at a different level. But lots of different things to do different functions. So we're going to work on fine motor control, this sort of thing, through your feet and ankles, the ability to fine tune your movements. All right. Conscious of everyone's time and getting them home for dinner, so we're actually just going to do a couple of these tonight and carry the rest over to Tuesday. But if everyone wants to gather around where they can see my feet, we'll start with toe switching.
Toe yoga?
Yeah. Can you make that sit on the floor so that you can see my feet? Is there enough cord?
Yeah, there will be.
Oh, good. Painted my nails. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so if everyone can see my feet, have a stand up. What you're going to try and do for the first one, I'm not going to tell you what kind of mobility it is because you're going to try and label it yourself. Try and lift up your little toes, leave your big toe down, and then lift up your big toe, leave your little toes down. So alternating between toe 1 and the rest of them. This is called toe switching. Some of you will find it easy. A lot of you will find it a little bit tricky. Some of you are going to find that it cramps in your feet, in your arches.
Stay down, you go up.
I've been told to put all my toes on the ground.
Can yours move separately?
Sorry, I don't know how to not do
Keep
this.
trying.
Oh, I did it.
So it's
There's
a
neural pathways.
neural pathway programming.
I have to pull my toe past the record.
Keep trying.
That's
The
weird.
toes go
Sorry?
inwards, outwards.
Roll. You can have a little roll, that's fine.
Very
A little bit of a roll through the ankle size is fine.
bad program.
You might need a little bit of roll through the ankle to get it started.
I'm very poor at this. Look at you go. Look how far you. The left one's okay with my big toe up.
All the muscles through the
Right.
That's all the muscles through the
Oh,
soles.
I'm the same. I can't get my big toes off.
Don't be so rude, Kathy.
Punch him, Kathy.
So some of you are struggling to get your big toe down, which tends to indicate that there's some weakness in the sole of your foot. Whereas others are struggling to get the big toe up. So problems with the muscles on the top of your foot. If it's both, then both. Both are the answer. But it's important for you to have the ability to activate the inner and the outer sides of your feet like that, so that when you're going to do a squat, you've got a nice strong, or any of your Olympic lifting, you've got a nice strong tripod foot, which we'll touch on a bit later. Any questions about that one? All good? Can't tell you. It's competition.
Nerve flossing.
Flossing.
Is that what it was?
I think it was lying.
I'll give you a hint. Don't listen to Harry. All right. The next one's similar control through the sole of your foot. I'm going to turn side onto the camera here. So if you need to shuffle around to see what I'm doing, what you're going to try and do is if you pick a line on the floor, maybe the edge of a gym tile, and then leaving your heel where it is, try and drag your big toe back away from that line and arch your foot up.
Oh.
The only trick is you're not allowed to curl the foot in and lift your toes off. You've got to keep the whole bottom of the big toe on the ground. So you're dragging the ball of your foot back towards the heel to lift the arch.
And can the toe come away from the line? Or do I need
The toe can come away from the line.
Make a rainbow on your foot
Yeah.
without curling your feet.
You gotta sort of,
So without,
just bring it back, you're trying to shorten your foot. Really short your foot.
Like if my.
Is that right?
Like the big toe's not allowed to like come off like this. So it has to be like flat.
No, none of the toes can come off.
Yeah, there's room for improvement.
But the ball can?
Yeah.
Is the ball coming
Try
up?
not to clench
Nah,
your
I'm
toes.
going
Just scrunch your toes.
I clench my toes.
No, the ball comes off.
Oh, the
Yeah.
ball comes off.
Just the feet, the toes, sorry, don't come off.
Like that?
It is. Try the other side.
I'm really sure.
Yeah. You need that. You're doing the same as mine.
I can't.
No, because you're lifting this up. That's going to come slide back.
Yeah, like an arm. Is this right?
Nope.
Is that right?
It's better. So some common faults I'm seeing, where am I on the camera there? Scrunching the toes, I'm exaggerating here a little bit, and lifting the sole of the foot off the floor, whether that's this way or this way, that's a fault, okay? So the ball of the toe and the big toe need to be flat on the ground still. It's only the arch that lifts off the floor.
Can you lift the other toe?
Initially, while you're practicing, if you need to lift the toes 2 to 5, when you get better at it, try and keep all the toes just resting on the floor, not pressing too hard, not trying to come off.
Your knees.
How's everyone going?
I'm even trying.
Yeah.
What are you doing? This?
When you get better at it, you won't clench these toes. Hope you haven't got too much for it. Not bad, Liam. Try not to scrunch the toes. There is no connection. Keep trying. It's pretty good. Pretty good, Kelly.
It's all in your butt.
It is all in your butt. Well done. You're onto something. You're up to week 3 already.
How lovely it was. It made me so easy.
Does anyone else have jack?
Ray has a very different butt punching face than I have. Mine's it.
Why do you need to make a face when you clench your butt? I mean, it's stupid.
No, my dog is doing a toe yoga.
I just got a toe here.
It's okay if it feels like it's just
Do you like it?
Is anyone still struggling that I haven't got to yet? Yeah, this corner.
How do you look?
Oh my goodness. Big toes go very up. Wow.
It's a glute raise.
You have to like.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like when you can't.
Like I can't like look at it and be like, oh, wow, I have to just like, sorry, I'm reading my research. Yeah, my student always did.
Stop looking at my toes.
I got on the right side of my glass, but this one, so what was it? There's like a slight a little bit of black.
Alright.
That's it.
Guys, we're gonna call it on the practical there. I'm sorry we've run about 10 minutes over time. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. We'll switch off the recording if anyone doesn't have questions, and then you can come and chat to me individually about anything that's problematic for you. I've got plenty of time, but I want to let anyone who needs to get home for dinner get off to do that. And unlike in Parliament, you'll get a direct answer. Game over. Time out. Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, got a touch screen.
If it works, mate, give it a second. You won't keep it.
Yeah, everyone's.
Sorry, I'll just be on recording for the rest of the No, you keep those.
Everyone keep your own sheets.
Don't lose them.
If you think you're gonna lose it, take a photo of it on your phone.